Hey gang, got a lot to cover on this little video. This is going to be the last week for us. Thursday is our last day. We want to finish strong. You guys, this week we'll have 2 discussion boards to participate in. Don't freak out, it's not going to be a big deal. Well, the first one is your regular discussion board, and you guys do a great job. Awesome job. I'm always, I love to log on and see what you guys are doing. Good job there. The final exam is basically going to be an extra discussion board topic to log in and just tell me what your favorite thing was that you learned this semester. And don't make it a kiss-up discussion board. That's not what I'm looking for. I genuinely want to know what was most interesting to you, what you learned, what you're going to take away from this course that'll be most helpful and beneficial, because that's important to me. Maybe it's selfish, but that is important to me. I want to know what's helped you guys. So for this week, you got the Chapter 14, Stanley Milgram, Obedience, Authority, Studies. This is a historic experiment that was used to check to see how obedient people would be, even if they felt like they were pushing the boundaries of how they were hurting someone else, because they were looking at the effect of authority and obedience in this experiment. So read about it, go to YouTube, look it up, and you'll see this. They can't replicate these studies anymore because of the ethics that we talked about in Chapter 1. So it's a very informative study. No one gets hurt physically. They claim that there could be emotional distress from it, so that's why they don't replicate the study. The short answer assignment you'll have to do is again on the Stanley Milgram obedience study. So go to YouTube, look at some information on it, and get well versed in it, and then you can go from there. Okay, got a lot to cover, so we're going to move on. Let's see. I wanted to talk to you about some notes in Chapter 13 and Chapter 14, because these are, you're going to go out on a high note. These are 2 great chapters, so even if you're tired of reading this book and you're tired of all of this stuff, Chapter 13 and 14 are very useful pieces of information to you. So in Chapter 13 they talk about stress, and I will go on record as saying that we live in a culture of stress. This U.S. American culture that we have is the fastest that this globe has ever seen with technology and the things that are going. You better keep up, because as my grandfather would say, if you fall down running to dinner, you might as well get up and go back to work, because by the time you get there, there's nothing going to be left, because we're moving fast, and you have to keep up. So in doing that, in knowing that, fine, you recognize the situation, you figure out how to deal with it. I want you to know that there are 5 things that I want you to take away from this chapter, above and beyond what's in the book. First is be aware. Be aware of what your stress level is. Be aware of some decisions that you can make. Financial issues are big stressors on people. Make some decisions about your budget. Eliminate things if it's stressing on you. And as you make decisions in your life about what is causing stress and what is not, you can give yourself a better value and quality of life by just being aware of your stress level and trying to take control of it. Coping is essential. Let me just tell you, control is an illusion. You do not have control of anything except how you respond to a situation. You do not have control over the situation. You do not maybe even have control over how you feel about it, because emotions are almost an automatic response. The only thing you really have control over is how you respond to it. So keep that in mind. That's a huge source of power, and you need to know that that is your sense of control. Respond appropriately. Eat well, exercise, take care of yourself. These are things that are your responsibility, okay? You make decisions every day about what you put in your mouth and how you take care of yourself. If you're going somewhere and you're always late and you're always stressed out about it, leave earlier. Plan it into your day. Plan for traffic. Develop routines. If you have a very busy life, and say for example getting out of the door and getting kids dressed and out the door, you can never find this kid's shoes or whatever. We have that issue at my house. That's why it comes up on my radar. I developed a special place. When I take his shoes off, I put Andrew's shoes in the same place every time, so that when I need to get out the door, or here's the other thing, I have a backup pair of shoes. If I gotta go, I just grab the other shoes and I don't worry about it. I'll find the others later. So develop a routine, get organized, because if you have a fast pace of life, you need to be able to execute. You may not, we talked about control. Let's talk about, this is not in your book. This is one of the things that I used in my area of research when I worked on my dissertation, and this is also one of the pieces of research that I used, checking my time here, as I developed the iPhone iTouch app on test taking, because this is a psychological component called the Yerkes-Dodson law, and is the relationship between stress and performance. You can call this stress, you can call this anxiety. I used it to look at test taking, and as people's level of anxiety and stress go up, they tend to do worse on a test than if they just had a moderate level of stress. Yerkes-Dodson said that there are good stressors and bad stressors, and to a certain point, stress is good because it's motivating. But past that point, sometimes we can't remember the things that we know. We know these things, but we just cannot remember them for the life of us because we're under so much stress and pressure. So let me show you what the graph looks like just real quickly, and then, you know, maybe you can, I don't know, maybe do some extra looking on it. But this is a very, very powerful technique. Sports psychologists use this all the time, because what you've got to be able to do, whether it's a job interview or a performance of any kind, musical performance, speech, whatever, taking a graduate level exam, you've got to be able to moderate and mitigate your stress so that you can perform to your best. Now real quickly, let me see if I can get this in the film here. Or film, that's an old term. Anyway, let's see. I'll bring it out here so I can write on it. See if I can move this. Okay, here we go. We're going to call this the stress. And you can have low stress or you can have high stress. Okay? If your stress is low, you're a couch potato, you don't really care, you know, big deal, whatever. High stress, you may think this is a high stakes test. This is your only chance to pass it. If you don't, you have a complete career change and your world will come to an end. It's probably not quite that much, but a lot of people build up those irrational beliefs that, oh my goodness, it's do or die. And then over here you have your performance or test score, okay? And then you can have low test scores. I think we've all had at least one low test score in our life. And then we can have high test scores. And I'm assuming that most of us want high test scores or high scores in whatever we're doing, unless we're playing golf. So here's what happens. Your low scores and results in a low performance, because this is also your motivation level, okay? Call that your motivation level, it's low. Well, as your stress goes up, this is called eustress, and it's good. So eustress. And they found that this curve goes like this. And as your stress goes up from low stress, you don't care, to caring about a subject and wanting to do well, your scores tend to go up. And they go up to a certain level of stress to where you function and do well. And this is called, I call it, your optimal performance zone. That's where you're going to do your best, where you're not too stressed, you're not too over anxious, and you can still recall all the information that you've learned. But as you move past that ability to be moderately motivated, your performance scores start to go down because you're overwhelmed. That's another term for the stress being high. You can be overwhelmed, and then your scores go down. And it follows this curve, and over time they tested it in many different ways, but they found out, like I said, a certain level of stress is good, increases your scores, but past this zone, your scores tend to go down. It's a very important concept, and I'm almost out of time, so I'm not really going to be able to address chapter 14 very well in this video. But chapter 14, let's just say that it's very interesting. It talks about perceiving others, talks about stereotypes, the persuasion, changing people's minds. If you guys are going to go into sales or just overall, it's a good thing to know how to change people's mind and be persuasive. Talks about prejudice, bystander intervention. That's why an emergency can occur and there's a lot of people around, and maybe people will respond and help, or maybe they won't. It talks about how there are decisions that are being made by those bystanders as to how and when they'll respond. The Asch experiment on conformity studies, the line lengths, that's another surprising one. If you're sitting in a group of people and you're just trying to decide which line lengths are the same, group dynamics can have a powerful impact on that. Gotta go. Bye.